I didn't think it would end this way. End? No. The journey doesn't end here. Death is just another path, one that we all must take. The gray rain curtain of this world rolls back, and all turns to silver glass. Then you see it. What, Alex? See what? The comeback of the century, son, as Professor Chaos and Kenneth Walker extinguished the flames of the Phoenix on Monday night, snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the dungeon for another hour of the Doctors of Doom podcast with your still undefeated and untied host, Alex the Shark Sparks, and joining me as always, the man who's had more total points on his bench this week than he did in his starting lineup, Mitch the Pie Guy Black. And of course, this star-studded lineup would not be complete without our punchline of a producer, Vinny Bad Beat Santucci. It's also a very special episode this week, as not only has our subscriber count gone up, but so has our number of special guests, as we are joined by the man who's having his own perfect fantasy season, just in reverse. Give it up for Austin Puddle Runner Weiss. Say hello to everyone out there in the ether, fellas.
I almost just boycotted the rest of this after I was the headline of the introduction. So what's up, world?
After the beginning of this introduction, I started Googling shark repellent. I wanted to figure out what it was.
Don't worry, you're not the only team that got bashed in the intro.
Well, in Vinny's defense, he gets bashed in every intro. But, I mean, I just called you Bad Beat because, I mean, that's what it was. And that's going to be the segue to our first topic here. Let's talk about some bad beats this week in DoD. So we'll start with the one I referenced. Vinny, let's go to your game here. Now, the final score, 107-92, it doesn't feel like a bad beat. Matt scored 107 points. The reason it's a bad beat is you were up by a ton going into Monday night with David Montgomery left, who has been an absolute baller, and somehow, between Walker getting only 12 touches, but on those 12 touches having 3 rushing touchdowns, and Amon-Ra St. Brown not just catching a touchdown, but throwing one as well, you not only lost, you got kind of blown out here. What happened, Vin? What happened?
Yeah, honestly, so I was going into it and I was like, all right, cool. Kenneth Walker, David Montgomery, let's just call it a wash. Amon-Ra needs to score 16. And, I think I was up by 16 or 17 points and I got this in the bag. David Montgomery had 40 rushing yards and a touchdown in the first 2 drives of the game. So I'm sitting on 10 points. Kenneth Walker had 12 yards rushing. Amon-Ra had 12 yards receiving. And then the third quarter happened. And Kenneth Walker had 2 rushing touchdowns, and Amon-Ra threw a passing touchdown, only to follow that up with a fourth quarter with another receiving touchdown and another rushing touchdown. It spiraled quickly. But, I guess that's what happens when Amon-Ra's playing. 29 from Kenneth Walker is just against the number 1 fantasy defense against running backs. That's just stupid. I was kind of hoping that they would just feed Charbonnet, considering he's been pretty successful the last couple weeks. That didn't happen, but it's fantasy. I text Matt last night, I'm glad I lost by 15 because if I lost by 1 or 2 with the game that happened, I would have been a lot more upset. But hey, it is what it is. I mean, when his defense outscores my defense and my quarterback combined, what can you do?
Yeah, I mean, when you take a quarter QB in the first round and he puts up 18 and someone picks up a defense that drops 28 on you, it's a tough go. It's a tough go. Matt had a lot of overperformers this week, finally getting him in the win column. Speaking of people who haven't gotten in the win column, Austin, we'll get to your team in just a minute, but first I want to address some other bad beats that happened this week. So one of the other bad beats, let's talk about Break and his loss to my dad, 2 of the most powerful teams. So Break was the 3rd highest scorer this week and lost. Not only that, he's the 2nd highest scorer overall, trailing my dad by only 5 points, and he's 2-2. He has the 2nd most points in the league, only 5 points off the top, and he's 2-2 right now. Talk about a bad beat.
I spoke to someone close to Adam recently, and apparently he said to say, I fired my fantasy defensive coordinator, and he wants Alex to hire his new one coming up here this week. So those are from his words. And I wanted to complain for Adam too. It's would you rather lose 60-90 or 59-92 or lose 2 times over 105? I don't know which one's worse. That would be, so I think I said it last week as well. I was like, when you play, if you think Nolan and Miles are 2 of the top teams, that's who he's lost to. He's scored 100 points above, but he's lost to Nolan and Miles. So that's, that's what's going to happen if Adam's going to be able to run. As I was saying, if I could survive these couple weeks against Miles and Alex, then I'll be able to put a bunch of wins together. I think Adam will be fine the rest of the year. He's played the two hardest teams at the beginning of the year. That's just the way it goes.
Yeah, I mean that'll happen. I mean, except it hasn't played one of the hardest teams in the league. Obviously, the Mighty Sharks still undefeated. Gotta keep tooting that horn as long as I possibly can. But yeah, moving on to some other bad beats. This one isn't fantasy relevant to us, but I'm sure it was to a lot of people. Tony Pollard's rushing TD. So for those who didn't see it, the Titans are up by 2 scores with 26 seconds left in the game. It makes no difference what they do, they're going to win. But on 4th down from like the 6, instead of kicking a field goal or just running it back and pulling a Vinny and trying to run time off the clock, they run the ball and Pollard gets to the edge and dives into the end zone for a touchdown, picking up 6 or 7 fantasy points, which again didn't make a difference in our league because Cam was beat anyway. But man, I'm sure some betting lines, or if not, certainly other fantasy owners probably got the hose on that one. What do you guys think about that play call by the Titans?
Well, someone else can take it. Be honest with you, the Titans game was off, and I was watching the Seahawks.
Oh, I mean, it's definitely definitely not the best game on Monday night, to be sure, but yeah.
Yeah, rookie head coach looking to pad his stats, make an argument to ownership if the rest of the season's a disaster. That hey, we wasn't ranked dead last and everything. We had good scoring output.
I almost wonder though if it was like one of those situations. I just can't believe that Pollard crossed the goal line. I think. Right. I mean, at the same point in time, if it's one of those situations where I think sometimes they'll do it at the end of the games, it'll be like 4th down. It's almost like rubbing it in to get the field goal and get the automatic points. I think there is something to be said. Like going for it on 4th down when you're up big is almost like you give the defense an opportunity to stop you to not run up the score. But yeah, that's a bad beat. I mean, Pollard touchdown at the very end of the game when you're already up like that is. But yeah, brutal. That was a terrible football game. It was
speaking
garbage.
Of terrible football game, which is the most interesting story for me is the Jets Broncos game. As our resident Bronco fans here, he can speak about it. But I want to ask you, Vinny, real quick, as someone who played this somewhat of a high level. I don't understand after 20 years how Rodgers' cadence could be too complicated for an offensive line in the offense. Saleh came out and said in the post-game conference that like. Rodgers' cadence is apparently too complicated and then they're gonna have to dial it back. And then Rodgers was like, I don't see why we have to do this. And then like, you're now publicly fighting your QB in the media, and no one would have even known this was a problem. The average fan, like, what's going on there? I don't understand. Is the offensive line really that far behind? I don't understand. From someone who played, explain to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think too. I'm trying to wonder like what when they use the term cadence, so they just referring to like his ability to snap the ball in a certain way with certain language, or is it more of just like all his cadence at the line?
So from my understanding is for like 16 years he's done green 19 hut or whatever, but apparently he does that for the first 3 quarters.
Mitch, you're lagging quite a bit, and all of a sudden the audio cut out. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, Mitch, I'm pretty sure that's what I was talking about before we started. I think there's an issue with your audio still, Mitch. But let's not get too off the tangent. I will comment on the Jets-Broncos game, even though it's off topic. Just, yeah, I've texted a lot about this in the group chat during the day. For those who did not have the privilege of watching that masterpiece of a game, good God, those teams suck. Up until like the second to last play of the half, they had set the record for least yards in a half. They barely eclipsed that with 1 completed pass at the end of that half. The game was sloppy back and forth. Both teams were terrible. They had more turnovers than first downs in the first half. And at one point, there was a pass interference in the end zone. And after 3 plays and then a penalty when they tried to go for it on 4th down, the Jets had to kick a field goal because they had lost yards instead of gained yards. The game ended with the Broncos missing a field goal that would have put them up by 4 with less than 2 minutes left. The Jets then have the opportunity to kick a field goal to win the game and also miss. And that's just impressive as hell. But yeah, we'll circle back to that. But Mitch, if you're back, I'll let you make your final thoughts on the Jets game before we circle back to what we were talking about. Also, Austin, feel free to weigh in. You are the resident Bronco fan.
Before
That was a
Mitch,
huge dub.
while Mitch gets his audio fixed, I can't believe we're 2-2 with 4 total touchdowns on the year over 4 games, which is the same number that Alvin Kamara scored in 1/2, and our receiving touchdown just 1 on the whole year over 4 games, less than Marvin Harrison Jr. scored on 2 consecutive plays in the first quarter of a game last week. So, I stopped watching those games a long time ago because I watch Red Zone now, and the Broncos are never on it.
Yeah, that's always a good point. Yeah, it's the stats of that game were absolutely awful. I honestly, it's at the point though. I don't know if the Broncos defense is that good. They've done really. I mean, they shut down the Bucks last week. They obviously shut down the Jets. Are the Jets that bad? Are they really that bad? Is the question that I keep asking myself. Like I think one of the things that has come up quite a few times is Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. You would have assumed that Zach Wilson last year was, their valley. Like they couldn't do any worse. Like that was their floor production. And obviously it was not their floor production because I would argue they are worse this year. So
and I mean,
it's quite fascinating to think.
You've been the one that's on the Breece Hall bandwagon. Mitchell and I were both very anti-Breece Hall coming into this season, and I think this game displayed it perfectly. Breece Hall had 10 carries for 4 yards. Anyone doing the math at home, that's less than half a yard a carry. I'm pretty sure if they gave me 10 carries, I might could get 4 yards. It wouldn't be pretty, and I'd probably be dead by the end of it, but that's not a high bar. He had a total of 18 yards on 12 touches in the game last night for a whopping 1 fantasy point. And this is a guy who was taken as the RB1 or 2 in most leagues, with CMC being 1. Granted, he has outperformed CMC, but that's a different story. But yeah, I just don't see how people are so high. Like even Rodgers wasn't good the last 2 years in Green Bay. He wasn't. Then he didn't play a year. And now all of a sudden, 4 years later, he's supposed to be great. I just don't understand the hype around him, the hype around Breece Hall. Like, yeah, he was decent last year. I'm not blaming Breece for this. I think the team is terrible, but I just think that, we didn't give the Giants a lot of credit for being a good team just because they had Saquon. Why are we saying the Jets are going to be good just because they have Breece Hall? So that's my final thought on that. If anyone else wants to talk about, we can. But if not, I'm going to circle back to bad.
I don't think the Jets are a good team, but I thought that would help them continue their passing offense into the fourth quarter and not shut things down. Garrett Wilson's the only warm body on that receiving core that I thought was going to get any attention. And you don't even need a top 3/4 of the league quarterback to support one good receiver. I think Deshaun Watson is last in the league in QBR, and Amari Cooper is still fantasy relevant. Aaron Rodgers is actually middle of the pack in quarterback rating this year. So for whatever reason, he's just spreading it around to Lazard and Conklin and Britt.
Yeah, I've got. Oh, let me share.
Touches and targets.
Share the screen with you guys. Yeah, I've got Lazard's stats up on screen while we're talking here. But yeah, Lazard's had 2 good games from a fantasy perspective. But yeah.
Yeah, going back to your last week section on bust, Garrett Wilson. I mean, I don't think there's any better definition of bust. I did not see this coming whatsoever, and 100% picked the wrong guy in that spot.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really. I mean, I know Mitch kind of called it, but I didn't see it coming. Again, I thought floor. The one thing I will say about like Breece Hall, it's kind of like what's happening with Bijan, and I just don't understand having elite running backs and then not getting them into a rhythm and feed them. Like you're going to give Derrick Henry 25 carries a game, and if you give him 10, he's never going to get into a rhythm. I think splitting carries for certain running backs works, and for others, I just think, you got to get somebody it's like making a free throw, letting them drive and shoot a free throw. But yeah, it's Garrett Wilson being this bad is worse than anybody expected.
Well, this kind of segues into my last bad beat. Mitch, by the way, you're back on the call, but you're muted. But my last bad beat's going to go to Austin's team. It's just bad, and once again, he got beat. It's worth noting, Austin, the bad beat here is that you benched DeAndre Swift this week, who dropped 24 points, and the guy you started over him got -2. So when you do the math, you would have won if you had made the right coaching decision. Granted, that's not all of your problems. As you mentioned, Garrett Wilson on your team here, he's got less points on the season than Alan Lazard. So
I think
Austin,
most rational fantasy managers hopefully have benched DeAndre Swift after his disaster showing the past few weeks. But yeah, that's been the name of the game with my 7 running backs on my team. Just been choosing the wrong ones every week, but most of them are trash anyways. So
Yeah, so
there was also reports out of Chicago saying that they were going to give Roschon like all of Swift's carries this week, and then all of a sudden Swift goes off for 24 fantasy points. So whatever.
yeah, it's I still have hope for my team, to be honest. It's I think they can turn this around and come back. I think Stroud and Kelsey can pick things up. I think if I can find some consistent running backs, maybe get some luck with some injuries to other players, and if the receivers kind of come back to life that we thought some perhaps they could have, maybe Tua comes back. I still think I got a shot, but yeah, it's been about as bad as it could be. Not used to quite being this far down the pecking order in the dungeon. I'm in the solitary confinement at this point.
Yeah, so let me ask you this, Austin. Have you been listening to the podcast at all coming in this week?
Yeah, I just caught up.
Okay, cool. So as you may know, then we did not love your team coming out of the draft, but can you give us the inside scoop? Were you happy? I mean, I know you're not happy with it now, right? But coming out of the draft, were you happy with the team that you had selected?
I'm honestly still think I would do that same strategy again. I just think I picked the wrong guys.
Okay, so
I thought seriously about the first 2 spots going Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins. I think that would have been a fantastic team had I picked those 2 guys instead of Tyreek and Garrett Wilson. I've got another league where I've got Josh Allen, Jefferson, Collins, Kamara, and Connor, and I'm undefeated and up.
Yeah.
So very similar strategy, just pick the wrong guys in the wrong spots. I actually thought seriously about grabbing those guys again, but we actually drafted last in DoD. And I like to hedge my happiness and not put all my eggs in one basket, one injury destroying all my teams. So I like to try some different players that I think have a good shot to do well, and picked the 2 worst ones in DoD.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask then, where do you think it went off the rails? You just think it's like Tyreek Hill, obviously his stock plummets without Tua.
Yeah.
And then Wilson, just because
I think I could have started, like I said, if I started Jefferson, Collins, Kamara, Connor. Those are guys I liked and picked in a lot of other drafts. And so, yeah, I think if I had started with those 4 and Jaden Daniel around 5 or 6, that would have been a Freeman team. I'd be thrilled. And again, I think I just picked the wrong guys in the wrong spots. But
yeah, I also think
you're not going to be looking at Kelsey that high anymore unless he really turns things around.
Yeah, I mean the amount of it, I don't even want to give like hate on Austin's draft. I honestly think, if anything, I mean, how often do you miss that bad on multiple picks? Reek with Tua going down for the first, Wilson being a bust. All of a sudden, Kelsey, who everybody thought was a steal in the 3rd round, is also a bust. And then when you go by this running back by committee situation, when like a 0 RB strategy, you have to hit on at least one, and then you think Najee would be better with Arthur Smith. I just think like the fact that you somehow managed to miss on every single pick is more dumb luck than it is bad drafting. You know what I mean? Like that's just like statistically improbable to get that unlucky.
Win some, you lose some.
Speaking of you falling in the dungeon, so we talked about this before, kind of off air. Interesting thing about DoD, there are only 5 teams with a winning record in DoD, and 4 of them are on this podcast. I mean, we haven't heard Mitch talking, but Austin, Vinny, myself, Mitch, and then Matt, who's not here right now, we're the only 5 teams with a winning record. The other 7 teams have a losing record in DoD. So you're one of the 5, but oh man, if you run the table in reverse here, Austin, that's really going to hurt your standing. I mean, you'll still probably be top 4 or 5, but it's going to hurt your standings for sure.
Yeah, I've had a couple bad years recently. I could do a whole podcast on my run from 2012 to 2021, where I think I finished top 1 or 2 in the league in points of a record more than half the years in a row, and didn't make it to a single Super Bowl, or maybe one during that.
Top being in the same division with the Avengers. Sorry, guys, I'm having terrible internet problems right now, and I'm not even sure exactly what's been talking about. But I know I can feel Austin's struggle being in the same division with the Avengers. I understand you, buddy.
Yeah, let's take a look at the Avengers. I heard they had a great week this week, right? So let me just take a look at the team that Austin's supposed to fear.
They were top scorer, weren't they? Top scorer.
Yeah. They had they scored 60.
Look how good
their
that
bench
team
their bench
is.
scored 60 points. Their starters scored 59. So,
Wait,
How
so
good that
just
team-
a,
that's a
just
great
a
team,
How
coaching.
many points did
Go ahead,
Josh Allen get?
Josh. Oh yeah, remember how we're all scrubs for letting Josh Allen
7.
go to
Oh
him?
my God. We are so dumb that we let Mitch get Josh
Let's see.
Allen.
Josh
You
Allen
guys
was
really
seven.
All of us are going to
Hold on,
regret it.
Hold on, let's see. Maybe he still scored high and only got beat by Kyler's 11. Let's check the other games. Well, 14, 20,
So how many of
32,
you played Nolan?
27.
How
Hold
many
on,
of
I'm still
you
counting.
played
18.
Miles yet?
4. He beat
That's what I
Richardson.
thought.
Credit where credit's due. 26-13 and 20-33.
Tab
Hey,
this
he was the
conversation
11th best.
for
Hey,
after
Alex,
you played
see-
Nolan and Miles.
The only quarterback that Josh Allen beat was the quarterback that played one drive before getting injured.
You guys make fun of this, but I have more points for than both of you. Keep going.
Yeah, but you're 2-2 and I'm 4-0. That's rough. That's rough. It's all about fantasy D. I'm preaching it for
Have you
years.
played Nolan and have you played Miles yet?
Well,
No, you haven't. So
let's
we'll
see what
talk
they
after
score
that
when they
what your
play my
record is.
fantasy defense, bro. It's all about fantasy defense.
Oh, and then real quick, I'm so happy, Austin, you're on here, and this is really unfortunate. My internet's doing all this, but I would like to say, last year you dropped C.J. Stroud for Chris, and he was like the best. Did you just have a repeat this year with Chris Brown with me? Please, yes, maybe,
Not to be confused with the R&B singer, Chase
Brown. Chase Brown. I said, what did I say? Chris Brown. But last year, I'm just giving Austin a tough time. Last year, Austin went a little too early on dropping C.J. Stroud, and Chris picked him up and started him the whole year. And then this year, he dropped Chase Brown, and I might be starting him the rest of the year. So I was just giving Austin a little.
Yeah, he had very little involvement the first few weeks, and my team's so bad I couldn't have the luxury of not chasing some better immediate upside.
Agreed. Totally agreed. I think I even commented on one last podcast. I was like, I'm happy that you were taking L's early because you were the only guy who played zero RB strategy. Any other person would have probably had to have followed Chase Brown, and I wouldn't be having him. So I got lucky there with you having to play the waivers on running backs.
And with him starting to be more involved in offense the week after I drop him.
Exactly. Nah, I was just trying to give you a little. But yeah, well, I'll comment. I hope my team's not Jekyll and Hyde this year, but I guess it's going to be hard to avoid that pattern if the difference between Allen every week is going to be 7 and 37. I was kind of hoping between like 18 and 30. You know what I mean? Like, so then I wouldn't be so Jekyll and Hyde, because I've always preached that you don't need to be a top scorer in this league to win it. You just need to score 90 to 94 points a week, and I promise you'll win Super Bowls. You don't have to be the top scorer every year. So it's better. How do you mitigate that? You get an elite quarterback who scores you 28 a week, and then you can hit that 92 mark most consistently. But if my quarterback's going to be 7 to 38, oh boy, this is going to be a long year. I'll be 9 and 5 points for, but I'm not going to win anything.
Speaking of elite quarterbacks, we had this conversation off air via text message. What's the deal with Jaden Daniels? So Jaden Daniels is a rookie playing for the Redskins, which quite frankly haven't been great, coming into this year, and he's popped off 27, 13, 31, 25. I mean, he's had 3 very solid weeks at QB. He set an NFL record for best completion percentage in his first month. Mitch, you had some thoughts about why this is happening, but yeah, is he a contender or pretender? Is he for real? Is Jaden Daniels for real?
I love that question. I will take some of my own knowledge, and I'll take some of Vinny's knowledge, to be honest with this. So
you're not going to let Vinny have his own knowledge? You're going to take it from him? You can let other people have points too. You can just make your points.
Yeah, well, I just want to give Vinny credit a lot of times, because a lot of times I'm taking other people's points and combining as my own. But no, I watched last year. Flacco got hurt. Terrell Suggs got hurt. It was like Mark Robin had an injury, and and everyone turned off the TV on the Ravens. Not me. I watched the last 8 games of Lamar Jackson his rookie year, and I want this guy. So it's not necessarily that no one's watching Jaden Daniels. I think what's going to happen is once you put film on tape, like Lamar did after his rookie year, he had 2 or 3 years where he slumped hard, and then he was able to pull himself out of that with different offenses. They now have Todd Monken and all that kind of stuff, and it's a different system. So it's like, I think what's going to happen is once Jaden Daniels, he's going to ball this year out, don't get me wrong. But after this year, I think once he puts enough film on tape, and these defensive coordinators who get paid millions of dollars and study all they do, they're going to come up with a defensive game plan. This is why Lamar can't win in the postseason. It's because of this specific defensive game plan. And then it's actually Mahomes and Lamar's instituting this in the NFL, the 2 safety deep. So like once that started happening a lot, and Lamar was able to work around that, I think he became back to an MVP quarterback because he started running again. But Mike, to sum it up, I just think Jaden Daniels is something they hadn't seen before with how small he is and his ability to see through the line. So I think it's just going to be film on tape, how they can study him, and then he's going to have a couple of years of regression. And for me, most interesting will be that period, like with Lamar. After 3 years in this league, can he sustain back to what he was before? RG3 couldn't do it.
I was about to ask, is this a shades of RG3 situation?
Right. RG3 came in and he couldn't get past that second, third, fourth year curve or whatever that curve is for each individual person. Cam Newton seemed to have figured it out, but remember, he slumped again after his like MVP rookie year. It just happens a lot of times that we forget how good these defensive coordinators truly are in real life, and like how much they're paid and how much they care about their job and how much they can figure this out. That's what I'm most nervous about, Jaden Daniels. The talent, undeniable.
All right.
Alex, do you mind scrolling down just a little bit? I'm just curious to see kind of what he's got coming up, like Cleveland, Baltimore, Chicago, Giants, Pittsburgh, Philly. I think through October into November, we'll kind of decide my thoughts on him a little bit. I just think Cincinnati's a terrible defense. They just got absolutely plastered by Carolina's offense. Arizona is obviously a bad defense. We've seen what's happened to the last couple of weeks. I think, I don't know. I watch him and I'm like, is this guy the real deal?
I think you got to give credit to Cliff Kingsbury for putting him in a good scheme. They're not asking him to throw downfield at all. It's all super short passes, minimal, even intermediate passes. They also got a better offensive line than I think a lot of people give them credit for, and they have a complementary running game with multiple backs in there having success. So I think that all takes a lot of pressure off him. You're right that defenses are going to be able to scheme him up better, but he's showed in college that he can throw the deep ball. And so if he can add that onto his game as a wrinkle, and Cliff can stay one step ahead of how the defenses are adjusting, which I think he's shown that he can do that in the past, leading elite offenses, they could have some pretty sustained success. I don't know if any of you seen the highlight reel of clownish hits that he also took in college. That's my biggest worry for him. If they keep asking him to run so much.
Awesome. That's one of my favorite highlight reels. I was actually talking about that, and I'm in a dynasty league with some friends, and everybody was hyping up on Jaden Daniels. I'm like, dude, this guy's gonna die in the next 2 years. He gets hit like Gumby, man. His highlight reels of hits in college are hilarious. So I'm looking forward to see. Well, not looking forward to it, but I'm waiting to see what happens when he crosses somebody in the NFL.
Yeah. 2 weeks ago, I traded for him straight up, giving up a Smith in a league where I had good receiver depth. And last week, I was said this is the worst trade ever. And this week, oh, heck yes. I'm so happy I did that. And I'm hoping he can finish as a top 5 QB this year.
I want to build off of Austin's point real quick. I was listening to the Cam Newton's podcast, and he was explaining the difference in the play calls between what Caleb was getting and what Jaden was getting. And then he would combine it comparably to what Bryce Young was getting and Stroud was getting their rookie years. And there was like a play where the left tackle is supposed to like leave the defensive end and go hit the linebacker, and he's like, Cam Newton's like, you can't, and this is a Caleb Williams call for the Bears. He's like, you can't call this. You don't have the personnel. Caleb doesn't have the experience. And he's like naming all these things. And he goes, now look at Kingsbury doing for Jaden. And it's like just simple check down, simple one read routes. And like, yeah, Cam Newton was all over that. So that's a great point, Austin. I really do think a lot of times these systems enable. So I don't like the talent's there, but if Austin has a great point, if Kingsbury can't game plan and ahead of the defenses, then I think Jaden Daniels will come back down there. I think that's a really great point by Austin. Did I cut out?
No, you're good. You're good.
No, you're here.
Oh, sweet.
So I always wait whenever you like mention someone specifically to see if they want to say anything before I jump back in. Okay.
Okay.
No, I was gonna let you take it from here.
So yeah, let's talk about the other rookie QB then. Since you mentioned him, Caleb Williams. I said it before. I think he sucks. I'm going to say it again. I think he sucks. Anyone have a different opinion on Caleb Williams? He's had one good game.
All I'll say is, if after watching the Cam Newton podcast and everything, I don't think they're calling plays for him that are helping his best benefits. I think they're trying to showcase to to Chicago and the fan base, look, we have the heir apparent rather than doing what's best for him. Also, there's I'm stealing this from Cam Newton's podcast, but there's a problem in the NFL with where quarterbacks and QBs who are drafted number 1 overall are on different paths. They're on split paths. So like the the coach is trying to coach for his job, but he's not doing what's best to set up for the first overall pick QB or a top pick QB. If you do what's best for the development and the number one QB, you're going to lose your job because it's not going to translate to wins. So if you have a top QB in the same place as a QB that's maybe on his way out, those situations never work. If the coach is trying to coach for his job, it will go against the young QB's development, if that makes sense. So it's like you have to have both and the other. You have to have a new coach with a new QB so they're in tangent and they're parallel with their same trajectory. I hope that made sense. I probably said it wrong, but
No,
And the owner has to have trust in the coach.
right. And the coach doesn't need to coach for his livelihood. He needs to say, I have job security to develop this QB. That's what he needs. So whenever a top person like Caleb Williams, they're not doing what's best for him. The coach is doing what's best for himself because he wants to keep his job.
I think what's interesting is I think like CJ Stroud kind of broke the paradigm of the expectations of rookie quarterbacks a little bit. And obviously Cam had a great rookie year too. But we all know that rookie quarterbacks aren't supposed to be that good.
Right.
I think Chicago, it's funny, I look at 2 number 1 picks back to back. Like whether or not you want to say that Bryce Young is already a bust is I don't care, but he was in probably one of the worst situations and one of the worst franchises in NFL history from like a number 1 overall pick. On the flip side, you have Caleb Williams. They bring in Keenan Allen. You still have DJ Moore. They draft Rome Odunze. They bring in DeAndre Swift. They try to load up the offense to be successful. And on the flip side of that, you're still putting an immense amount of pressure on a rookie quarterback to win games, which can have an inverse relationship on the psyche anyway. So I think both situations, although polar opposites, are terrible for the rookie quarterbacks and their development. I think we need to just accept rookie quarterbacks aren't usually going to be good. Let's quit giving them these high expectations. Let's let them develop, like kind of Mitch said. I don't know. I don't want to call Caleb Williams. I think talent evaluators in the NFL are really good at what they do. And if you're a top 5
Agreed.
NFL pick, you should, you warrant some discussion. Like Will Levis going in the 2nd round is a talent evaluation. Like for whatever reason, he still wasn't drafted that high. Like I trust that more than I trust completely
agree.
busting on a top 5 pick.
Yeah, the talent evaluations, they're so good at that. It's the problem once they have the talent, how to apply the talent. I completely agree.
Yeah, I don't know. I
And there's
just
also-
from watching him in college, I just didn't think he was that good. Especially his senior
That's fair.
his senior year, I did not think Caleb Williams was that good. I think a lot of his value came from him being able to outrun the defenders, and you can't do that in the NFL.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. His stats against top 25 college defenses is like abysmal. Isn't it like 200 yards passing per game and like a 1-to-1 touchdown interception ratio or something like that? It's really
That's
bad, but yeah.
Speaking of quarterbacks that take a while to develop, Baker, as just when I was starting to like him, and I even admitted to you guys, my hate Baker's calming down. I do think he's good now. Just when I was starting to like him, he picks a fight with Tom Brady in the media. It's like, bro, what are you doing? Just stop. I'm like, come on, I'm trying to like you.
Speaking
I'm trying to
of Baker,
like you.
One of our listeners wanted me to make a comment. He wanted to
Oh,
make
no.
sure that I let you guys know how impressive
Oh,
it
no.
was that he had the restraint to take Mayfield over Bo Nix, even though Bo Nix was
The
an Auburn
restraint.
man.
Speaking of rookie quarterbacks,
He said, and I quote, "When Bo makes a good commercial, I will pick him." So Baker riding those progressive commercials all the way to,
Oh,
to
no.
Nolan's roster, which is
You know what's
which
crazy?
is a big game.
Is he? Yeah, every league I'm in, everyone would pick up Baker week 1. I was looking for like, oh no, am I picking up Baker so no someone else can have him? And of course, Nolan drafts him. It's just Nolan drafted Love and Baker. Like it's so good, so good.
Yeah, starting Baker this week was actually the wrong play. With 32 was his second highest scoring QB with Love.
You
at
have
35.
to, right? You have to start Baker this
No,
week.
no,
If you're-
no.
if Nolan's-
I would have
okay,
done it as
okay.
well. Baker. I mean,
Okay.
last week Baker didn't do well, but Baker's been strong, and you weren't sure about how Love was going to look coming off an injury.
That's more the latter, exactly.
Yeah, no,
You
I
gotta
just
see-
I definitely would. I'm just saying, like, it's ironic that he had Baker Mayfield. He scored 32, which I think was the second highest scoring QB this week from a starting standpoint in our league. Yeah, 33 for Fields. He was at 32, which is another hilarious comment. But got outscored by the 35 from Love on his bench.
Yeah.
Which
And he did
I think it was like
good.
28 to 3 at halftime. So at halftime he was looking like the smartest coach in the world because Jordan Love hadn't done anything and then exploded for 4 touchdowns in the second half. So, yeah.
I'm big fan of Nolan, big fan of his team. I'm just hoping he can get some bad weeks here, so I'm not playing the wild card game the whole year. Hoping he takes some L's.
But yeah, I wanted to give him a shout out because just like me, he's also having an undefeated season. It's also looking pretty good for my pie bet on this side. The pie bet with Sam Darnold, I'm absolutely getting pied in the face, and it's only week 4. But the pie bet about the Sparks family, Brake's only 2-2, but his team looks great. Dad and I are both undefeated. Even Sylvia's 2-2, whereas the Black family, they've got 2 2-2s and a 1-3. So, and that one came from Matt's epic comeback win. If not, he'd be sitting on a goose egg too.
That is like the most yellow journalism I've ever seen. If you go into the stats, I'm not even afraid of this bet. I like it still. We'll see how it goes over a 16-game season.
Okay, so if you look at
Miles is
so if you
a
look at
top scorer, and I'm
you
a
said
top
you go to
scorer.
the stats. I've got 3 games on Matt, so I feel like I've got a decent lead there.
You have 21 more
the-
points for than Matt.
In the Penguins division, Brake's got the most points and is in the lead and the best division
He's
record.
got a good team.
And
but
in this
Miles is
division,
right on.
Dad's clapping. So
He's only got 50 or 40 more points. That's a
40 more
lot.
points and 2 W's.
But I do get to play him again. Hopefully, I can add a loss to there, so that's a plus -2 or whatever you want to call it. So I'm like,
I mean,
look,
historically
just go to
speaking,
a
you
scroll real
don't
quick.
beat him, though, Mitch. That's the thing. Historically speaking, you do not beat
Yeah,
him.
well, we're not talking historically. Scroll up. I'm
Hey,
talking-
Alex, I just want
go
to
to
pull the rest.
2023 real quick. Go to
I want
2023 real
I
quick.
want to pull the rest of the. While he's pulling that up, I want to pull the rest of the podcast here.
Oh, that looks
Is
good.
there-
Oh,
is
that looks
there-
real good.
Is there an easier vote or like cast of confidence than I'm rooting for Nolan over Mitchell in the history of any fantasy sport? Like
I
that is
root for
just-
Nolan over myself. Like, that's not fair.
That's like the easiest thing in the world to support right now, and I think
You
we're
know how
all for it.
competitive, Vinny. You've known me since what, 6 years old, 7? Alex, you've all like, how competitive am I? And even throughout the years, I'm like, oh well, I lost to Nolan, whatever. I root for Nolan.
Yeah,
It's
while
hard.
also managing Miles' team.
Hey, I'm not. Miles is really good at fantasy. Don't even sell him short. I managed Cameron's team for a little bit, but that's because Cameron. I felt bad after taking Marvin Harrison, and he just didn't care. So I was like, oh well, his team's got to still play the waivers. That was for like
Speak-
4 weeks.
Speaking of that, outside of Super Bowls, obviously the Avengers are the most successful team on a wins-loss basis in our league. And so far, he has admitted to helping manage all 3 of my cohorts in my division between Adam building the computer, Miles and all the fantasy advice he's given him over the years, and then actively managing Cam's team. I am like playing Mitch on multiple fronts. I don't
Let's be real
understand
here.
this.
Let's be real here. Adam will never take. Wait, hold on. I got to defend myself.
Those 3 teams you just
Yeah.
referenced have a combined 0 Super Bowl wins. So how much help is he really giving them?
Okay, so I helped Cameron one time with a Clinton Portis pick because I felt bad. And I managed his team for like 4 weeks while we were in high school or whatever because his password was Sarah Netherton forever or whatever. It was so easy to log in. Okay, so that's literally 4 weeks. And then he asked me, who do I go between? It was like Sean Alexander, Priest Holmes, and Clinton Portis. And I told him to go Clinton Portis second overall. You could go to the draft history. And he did. And Clinton Portis had like a baller year. And lastly, Adam has never taken fantasy advice from me as much as I try. Every time I ask him, Adam, do you want fantasy advice this year? He goes, yeah, why didn't they just fly the rings on the Eagles into Mordor? Why did they have the Hobbit take it all the way? That's literally his answer every time.
Hey, we
And,
don't talk
taking
about Lord of the
kickers
Rings in
from
this
you.
podcast, all right? That's a non-topic here. At no
Non-topic.
point, at no point does anyone mention Lord of the Rings or quotes from that movie in this podcast.
Miles is extremely knowledgeable. And lastly, I'll say to Cameron, I've been trying to beg Cameron to draft a QB in the 4th or 5th round and not get his 5th or 6th good wide receiver for about 7 years. So he has not been listening.
Speaking of Cameron, you did kind of put him on blast. If this podcast ever does get big, which I don't expect, but if it does, and Sarah Netherton and her family are listening, that's gonna be real awkward for Cam. But
Oh, God.
Well, I mean, that's not even talking about his other password. So
Chris's sister's
shout
password.
out
We're not gonna
hashtag
We're not going to
Chris.
say that one. We're not going to say that one.
are we spilling all the tea today on the show? All the
No,
tea?
we really actually can't say that one, Alex. We really can't.
Anyway, I guess we'll just keep this on the QB theme. This is an argument we had, and well, we started to have. I don't engage when you guys try to have these arguments in our group chat because I want to save it for the podcast. So I'm going to bring it up here. We talked about the best quarterbacks of all time. Vinny, you mentioned the cheater. Mitch, you mentioned someone who's currently playing. So before you two give me your reasons for that, Austin, who do you think is the best quarterback of all time?
Are you seriously asking this question? You know
Yeah.
exactly what I'm going to say.
Is he going to say John Allen? I want to hear it.
Elway.
Let's hear it. I love it. Let's hear it.
The car dealer himself.
He's openly admitted that his biggest mistake as Broncos GM was not taking Josh Allen when he had the chance. So, man, he is literally the next reincarnation of John Elway, and I'm just imagining how different things would be if he was on the Broncos.
Let me spice it up, Ross.
So you're not saying that Elway is the best of all time. You're saying Josh Allen is the best of all time?
Oh, no, I think he's like baby John Elway. No, of course John Elway is the greatest, and no one can ever top his amazing run for the Broncos, capped by 2 Super Bowls, riding off into the sunset, and yes, selling cars.
Josh Allen called
area.
Baby Josh Allen is amazing. I've never heard that's original. I love that. Or Baby John Elway. That's amazing. I'm going to use that. Keep that. All right, here. Let me spice it up for you, Austin. It came from this question. The question is, who had a better year? Can someone help me out?
We'll come back to that, but let's do the QB thing. And then, but yes, that's going to be the next topic because we're going to do that question. But yeah, let's do the QB thing first because that one branches outside of the NFL a little bit. So
gotcha.
So yeah, go ahead and give your take here.
Well, I don't want to repeat myself from that branches out, but the Mahomes thing for me is he's had the best career under the age of 30 for any QB ever. NFL's king. It doesn't matter if you're Caitlin Clark or whatever, you know what I mean? NFL's king. But the thing is, like, after the age of 30, look at the careers of a lot of the quarterbacks that people name are the best ever, like the Brady's, Breeze, Rodgers, Montana, Elway. After the age of 30, they had their best part of their careers. Like, I think Brady won only 2 before the age of 30, and then he won 5 after that. So it's like, what if Mahomes has not even had the better part of his career is what I'm trying to long-winded say. What if we still haven't seen, I think, was he 28, 29? So like, I just turned 29. What if we haven't even seen the best of Mahomes yet? Here's the other thing is people aren't realizing how valuable this guy is. We have the wrong perception of the Chiefs. We need to change. I know perception is reality, but we have the wrong perception of Mahomes right now. We have the perception of this guy is going to go out there and throw 50 touchdowns and light it up. The last 2 Super Bowl wins, their defense has been much higher ranked than their offense. Their defense was number 2 ranked and number 9 ranked when they won the Super Bowls last 2 years. And their offense was like 14 and 16th. They weren't even in the top half last year of offensive statistics. So the perception needs to change. This is now the Chiefs winning on their defense, and Mahomes is going to make 2 or 3, 4 plays a game that's like, wow, that was Mahomes again, and they're going to win these games. That's the perception we need to have Mahomes, and I don't think people understand how valuable he is. He'll go out, throw 50 touchdowns, he'll win you the close games. You want to start rookie Wanya Morris and play on one leg going in the Mahomesboro or Chiefboro, whatever they were calling the Bengals owning the Chiefs last year. He goes in on one leg into Cincinnati, beats them, wins another Super Bowl. Donovan Mitchell was a terrible right tackle. They benched him halfway through. 2 rookie tackles. Look at the Ravens. They're starting 2 rookie tackles who are supposedly going to have long careers and great picks, and like they're 330 pounds plus, and they're going to be amazing. Like they struggled the first couple games running the ball a little bit, and look what they've done now when they've gotten into the flow of things. The tackles for the Chiefs they never got into a flow of things. Donovan Mitchell and Wanya Morris. The fact that Mahomes was able to do what he did with that line, no receiving core, I think people just do not understand how valuable he truly is.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
Right.
I will
ahead, Vinny.
have to say, like, I know that you said that I picked the cheater. I think by the end of it all, I think from a fantasy perspective, obviously the last couple of years for Mahomes have not been great. I'm with Mitch. I think he is undervalued at how good of a quarterback he is. Like he said, if you look at who his receiving weapons have been and who his offensive line has been since they lost Tyreek Hill, and the fact that he still is winning games, virtually owns the AFC, it's just wild. But yeah, I mean, I would say that for me, I can't take any credit away from Brady as the greatest of all time, but I do think at the end of the day, when Mahomes retires, if he gets like another 8 to 10 years, there's no question in my mind that it's going to be him at the top of the pedestal.
I think with both these
Right.
situations, you can't take away the impact of the head coach and the head coach quarterback combo. Like you said, they're just beating teams because they're making the right plays. They're out scheming the other team. They have that mind meld between the coach and quarterback. They're on exactly the same page. They know exactly what the other one's thinking. You know what they need to do, and you know that goes a long way. And so I think you got to give Andy Reid a lot of credit as well for the success they've had.
Well, Austin,
Yeah.
one last question to you on your pick of Elway. Elway, as you mentioned, he rode off into the sunset, back-to-back dubs in the Super Bowl, and then called it a career. In your opinion, as a Broncos fan, if Elway hadn't retired, how many more could he have run off before calling it quits? How many more bowls, how many more rings could he put on those fingers?
I think the team put all their eggs in that baskets for those 2 years, and the team fell off pretty quickly. And it wasn't just quarterback play after that. We had some lean years. We've actually had about a couple lean decades since then, with the exception of those couple Peyton Manning years.
As
So,
a Raider
yeah,
fan,
I don't know if
we know all about lean decades, so I hear you, man.
Yeah. I think Austin's like one of the few people that can relate to how lean the decades have been. Maybe us and Bears fans.
Well, no, because Austin got a chip in there with Peyton at one point. So.
Yeah, that would have been so much fun to root for Peyton. Come on now.
And the Tebow year. I mean, the Tebow year is exciting. You got to admit. Especially
Tebow
if
is
you
probably my
trade Eric
favorite
Decker to
athlete.
Vinny.
Yeah, yeah,
You know
Tebow
what?
and Peyton.
Actually, I want to throw something out for the pod because I've been thinking about this. Was Tebow a generation too early in the NFL? So
completely.
we don't have to do it today. I was thinking about this the other day. I saw some Tebow highlights, and I was thinking of how prevalent game plans are now to scheme rushing attacks. And I would love to just on next week's episode talk about whether or not Tebow is a decade too early.
I want to talk about this because I've gone on record as saying that I think the best offensive mind in football during my adult lifetime has been Kyle Shanahan. I think the guys he runs out there, no matter what team he's on, they perform well. Doesn't matter who he's got to put out there. He's done well with every team he's been with. He was the guy calling plays for Tebow, and they were 9-7, went to the playoffs, won a playoff game. People like bash Tebow. Tim Tebow, as an NFL starter, had a winning record. Period. End of sentence. Now, you can say there's a lot of issues with him and why they didn't want to keep him long term, sure. But Tim Tebow, as an NFL starter, had a winning record and won a playoff game. So I kind of agree with you that he didn't really get a fair shake. That being said, I do think the whole running QB thing only works if they can also throw. And I don't know that he could also throw in the same way some of the other guys can because of the height. He was a lot shorter. So, you know, Drew Brees was special in that he was short and could throw, but he couldn't run, obviously. I just don't know that Tebow wasn't big enough to be like a power runner, but he wasn't he's like too small to be a power runner and too small to be a thrower. I just don't think he had all the tools to go long term, but I do think in today's NFL he would have gotten more than the one season. But that also comes back to the point Mitch made earlier about once they get him on tape, does he fall off? And I think teams thought he was going to fall off, and that's why they moved on from him after only 1 year.
Alex, what bothers me the most though is because I'm a big Tebow fan, so I'm gonna be biased. But like Daniel Jones has one playoff game and they gave him like a top contract in the league. Trevor Lawrence has one playoff win and they gave him a top contract. Like look at these quarterbacks that are getting paid that have never won anything, but Tebow couldn't get a shot. It actually frustrates me. But I want to ask Austin the question that we asked off air because I'm really interested in his answer.
Yeah. Okay. We'll move on to that question.
Go for it, Alex.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead. So Mitch, go ahead and ask the full question before we give any answers.
Okay, okay, definitely, and help me out because I might struggle with it. But who had a better year? It was a better overall year. Simone Biles, Patrick Mahomes, Caitlin Clark, Shohei Ohtani, or Scheffler, the golf Scotty Scheffler. Who had the best year? Simone Biles, Shohei Ohtani, Patrick Mahomes, Caitlin Clark, Scotty Scheffler.
I'd probably have to go with Scheffler there, just with his pretty unprecedented Tiger Woods level of dominance. Biles, she's done this before where she's dominated everything. I think, it's awesome to see her do that, but gymnastics is a bit of a niche sport and a short-term Olympic glory that, we've already seen from her. Obviously, she's a legend. I think if Ohtani wins the World Series and World Series MVP, you could put him with the season he's had up pretty close to that. Caitlin Clark, I think, obviously has been on top of the world and all that, but just performance-wise, not winning championship, in the WNBA right now, I think she hasn't won everything there is to win as much as the others have. So, yeah, I mean, Scheffler's had an epic run, and it's pretty hard to do what he did.
What's crazy is we all have 4 different answers to that question. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think we do.
Vinny picked Ohtani. I picked Mahomes. You picked Scheffler. Chris picked Clark. Caitlin
No,
Clark.
I picked Clark. I don't think.
Oh,
I
sorry,
don't know
you
the correct
picked
answer,
Clark.
but yeah,
Sorry.
so let's go ahead and give that. That's really cool, actually. We all had 4 different answers. So Austin just explained he had Scheffler and explained why. So Vinny, we've kind of already heard Mitch. Do you have anything you want to add about Mahomes? You've already talked about Mahomes, but anything you want to add for this argument specifically?
No, definitely not. I'm just saying. My only argument is just NFL's more popular than all those, and that's why I'd give it to Mahomes. But go on, Vinny.
All right, Vinny, go ahead.
Yeah, I picked Ohtani. I'm a huge Ohtani fan just from like the talent that he is. I think what's crazy is he's going to be the unanimous MVP of the league this year, and that's without his pitching prowess. And so let's just go ahead and put it this way. I think he just did something he 50 home runs, 50 stolen bases that no other player has done in a single season. Only 2 other people have even had a single season with either 50 home runs or 50 stolen bases. And I stole, I mean, it's just stats, but it was stats that I wouldn't have had if I didn't hear it from the Rich Eisen show. So in the game that he broke the record of 50-50, he went 6 for 6. He had 10 RBIs. He hit 3 home runs, and he had 2 stolen bases with 5 extra base hits in a single game, right?
Yeah,
so that's obviously like a great game. So people have done 10 RBIs in a single game. They've gone 6 for 6 in a single game. They've hit 3 homers in a single game. They've had 5 extra base hits in a single game. They've stolen 2 bases in a single game, right? But nobody has done each of those in their entire career, and he did it in the game that he set a record that nobody else has ever done in their entire career. So I just think like it's just an absolutely incredible display of talent from a hitting standpoint that will never be replicated. So I don't understand how we can vote for anybody else on that list when I truthfully think that nobody else will ever do this in their entire career ever again. So,
Sure.
I mean, I think whether baseball's popular or not, it's just...
Sports isn't about empty stats, though. It's about championships.
Yeah, so
if they lose before the World Series.
I'm glad you ended on the point that whether or not it's popular, because mine is going to be the least popular sport on this list, but I'm still going to clap your arguments. So my argument is Caitlin Clark. Why? She put women's basketball on the map in this country. Period. No one talks about women's basketball. Over the last 2 years, the only story about women's basketball was Brittany Griner going to Russia and getting incarcerated. That was the only story about women's basketball. This year, people cared about records Caitlin Clark broke. The Final Four because of Caitlin Clark being in it. They cared about the Olympics because Caitlin Clark wasn't on the team. They've cared about all the stuff she's done. And oh, by the way, she's killing it in the WNBA right now. It's not like she was a flash in the pan or something. She's actively just dominating. People are like so impressed by how many assists and things she has because everyone thought, oh, she's just a shooter. Like, no, she's an all-around baller. She's crushing it. She's put the WNBA on the map, and no one is ever going to have a bigger year, and she's never going to have a bigger year in that sense. One of the reasons that I think that's more impressive than some of the stuff you guys talked about, when you talk about best year, the question wasn't best sports year, it was best year. Scottie Scheffler got arrested this year. Ohtani's been involved in a gambling scandal this year. All right? There have been a lot of things going on this year that are tangential to their playing sports that have brought down their years, right? Whereas Caitlin Clark hasn't had that. The scandal of Caitlin Clark was, she got left off the Olympic team. Well, that wasn't a scandal. That was just good pub for her. When everyone's like, oh my God, I can't believe we left her off. Now, there was a reason for that. She was playing in the Final Four, and because of that, she couldn't make it to the Olympic, practices and things, so they left her off. It made total sense. She's not upset about it. At least she claims she wasn't, and she'll be on the team in 4 years anyway. So that's why I think it's her. Other people, on those lists, I think I didn't talk about why I think it's better than Mahomes and better than Simone Biles. You guys already mentioned Biles has done it before. She also took home a silver in an event she was expected to get gold. I'm not saying that's not super impressive. Getting any medal, making it to the Olympics is super impressive. So I'm not trying to knock her for getting a silver, but when you're expected to get gold and you bring home a silver in one of your events, it's hard to say that I had a great year, because given the context, it wasn't as great for her as it could have been. Plus, like we said, she's done it before and was expected to do it. And then there is Mahomes. Same argument. Yeah, Mahomes killed it. No shade to Mahomes, but he had done it before. And there were other good pieces on the team, too. I just think that overall, Caitlin Clark individually had the best year because she's done something that hasn't been done before. She's made a sport that was not relevant into relevancy. So for me, Caitlin Clark had the best individual year all around of all the people cited there.
I'm really happy that your take hinges on the fact that the WNBA went from the 20th most relevant sport in the United States to the 19th.
Yeah, it moved up the list, right? But it's
Also,
not. I'm
mine,
not, I'm, not,
I
I'm
just
not saying that the viewership numbers have spiked, but I'm saying people are talking about it. And that's what matters. Like it's making it relevant because people are talking about it. Like on SportsCenter, you're actually like seeing highlights, and not just highlights of a WNBA game, but like they're giving like interviews and things like that. Which, sure, for me as an average sports fan, I probably would rather them devote that time to something else. But the fact that it's getting airtime on the mothership is a huge deal. Because before, the only time the NBA got any airtime was during the finals, WNBA. So it's like, I think she has had a huge impact on the sport, not just financially and from a viewership standpoint, but for like a relevancy standpoint. And yes, that's probably going to fade over time, but guess what? It wasn't who's had the best of all time. It's who had the best year this year, and I think it's her.
Yeah, it's almost like the Marvel villain aspect to me too. Like, would like people like Angel Reese even be prevalent if it wasn't for Caitlin? Like the fact that the whole world knows who Angel Reese is as Caitlin Clark's adversary is wild to me. Like, not only do we know Caitlin Clark, but we know like who her rookie rival is same year. So yeah, I do think there's a testament to that because Angel Reese is terrible at basketball and yet somehow is probably the second most popular player in the WNBA.
All right. Anyone have any last points on? Oh, go ahead, Austin. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just think you gotta, if you're looking at popularity contests, that's one thing. But if you look at results, I'd be more inclined to give her a vote if, let's say, in the next 2, 3, 4 years, she wins Finals MVP, League MVP, takes her team to a championship. For me, I think that's the next step she needs to take to say that she's had the best year of any sports person in the entire world. I think Scheffler putting himself in the, top 10, if not top 5 golfers in history with a single season of epic major and championship performances. He's not just putting in the stats, but he's getting the results and the W's.
Yeah, no, if the question was who had the best sports year, I think you and Vinny would have better arguments. But because it's the question is best year, which includes both on and off the field, or on and off the court, or on and off the green, whatever you want to call it, because of that, Scheffler got arrested this year. You can never say I had the best year of my life when you got arrested, usually, right? Vinny, you can attest to that. Was the best year of your life the night you got arrested?
Yeah, I would argue that I had a pretty solid year.
Well, was it the best of your life?
I mean, his son got born this year. That's a pretty good thing. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Hey, so actually, here I think I have a good counter. I have a good counter argument to this. So, Alex, do you know who Scottie Scheffler is?
The golfer? Yeah, I'm well aware of who Scottie Scheffler is.
That right there solidifies the fact that I think he had the best year. Can you name 2 other golfers right now?
Yeah. So Colin Morikawa for sure, and then that Irish dude.
What about the Auburn?
What's the Irish dude's name?
But also, hold on. I also want
what's the Irish
Roy
dude's name?
McIlroy. I mean Roy McIlroy. But also, I know Scottie Scheffler because he got arrested. Also, that's not true. So? I watch golf a lot with my step grandfather because that's the easiest time to hang out with him when there's something on TV and he watches golf. So I wouldn't watch it on purpose, but as a result, I've seen some golfers.
Exactly. The fact that you know that Scottie Scheffler
Brian
is good and had a great year.
Other names that I know. I know some other golfers, all right? Scheffler got arrested.
Bryson DeChambeau.
No, I said Brian. Is it Bryson?
It's Bryson.
Whatever. I knew his name for the most part. But hey, that goes back to my whole I don't think golf is a sport, but that's a different argument for a different day.
That's why I think Scottie might be number 1 on the list.
What about Duffner, the Auburn guy? I just know him because he went to Auburn. But I would like to point out, though, as someone who's extremely biased towards this topic, because like I get what you're all saying and the best year and all that, but like for me, as someone who gets called Kyle Korver at the pickup park in Balboa basketball and even at the 24 gyms, like when I see Caitlin Clark shoot it's like I see guys who do that on Tuesday nights at the gym. I'm like, every time I watch Patrick or Schefter or Shohei, I'm always just like, oh my gosh, like look how crazy that is, or look what they're doing. And it's like, I know Caitlin Clark's super popular and everything, but it's hard for me. Like look at Simone Biles as he's like, I couldn't do that in a million years. So it's like, for me, it's very biased in how I vote for this. And it's like, I look at Caitlin Clark and I get why she's popular and I get it all, but me personally, it has not made me watch any WNBA games.
Right, but every time I'm context matters, right? Like, yeah, if you try to compare Caitlin Clark to a male NBA player, she's probably going to fall short, but that's not her competition. You have to compare her to other female athletes, and she is the greatest female college scorer of all time.
Sure.
Period.
Yeah.
She is having one of the best rookie years in the WNBA of all time. She is killing it in her sport against her competition. The same way, it's really hard to sit here and compare guys from past eras because they don't play the same style game. Like, it's really hard, to sit here and compare a guy like Barry Sanders, for example. You can't always compare him to a guy like Derrick Henry because they played in different times. It's just a different game. So it's hard to make... They're both great, but, like, as far as arguing who's better, like... and I'm not trying to start that debate, so please don't. That's not. I was just picking two random names. But You can't compare guys from different eras. So like, you can't compare Caitlin Clark to some random NBA player because she's not.
What
in
about
the
the random guy at
WNBA.
Balboa Park?
So, but anyway, and also for the record, I do think she would ball you up. So you saying that you could do that, like. Yeah, you can play basketball.
I'm not saying I could guard. I'm not saying I could guard her. I'm just saying there's guys at Balboa Park that I play against that could easily ball her up. And even at 24-hour fitness, there's ex-college players that are in that gym. Like there's like a 6'10" guy in there who never gets off the court, and everyone like waits till he shows up to the gym, and they all try and get on his team because winners stay on court. But I'm just saying like. I think he said he played at Florida or something and he couldn't make it pro. But like, the thing is, I'm just saying like, I didn't mean to turn into that, but I'm trying to say is like, what I was trying to lead to is the interesting part about this question is I was debating between Mahomes and Biles because Biles for the next, she had 4 moves named after her in the last 3 years or whatever. Like they're called the Biles.
But they weren't named that this year. And this was about the best
That's
year,
true.
not the best career.
That's true.
Argument.
That's very true.
I think
her year this year
solidified the argument. Like, we're talking about just
no. I'm trying to say
year.
her having this year. If she didn't have this year, it would have been the mental health things. One of our great, but this year in her in the Olympics solidified her as one of our greatest athletes in America ever. And it's not just America. When other countries talk about Olympic gymnasts and their own countries, Biles' name is going to come up in every other country. So that's what I was saying is like, and that happens because of this year, not because of her career necessarily. I think a lot of it got reaffirmed this year. I know she got the silver.
Right, but
disappointed me. But
who's to say though that Caitlin Clark's name doesn't come up in other countries when they talk about their women's basketball program?
Very true.
Very true.
Okay, I'll give you that.
Because we don't follow women's basketball, right? The Olympics
True.
is a much bigger stage. So I mean, I get what you're saying. Like, and
I don't want to sound like a sexist more than I already have.
No, I wasn't trying to make it like that. But I just when you tried to compare her to Kyle Korver, I'm like, all right, well, he played in the NBA,
sure.
like.
That's what he calls me. That's what I get called on the court, though, by all the guys. I get called Korver in the corner or Ignaro, the new white boy for the Grizzlies, whatever. I forget his name. I'm too old now, but it used to be Koiver. Now I get called Ignaro or whatever his name is.
All right. Well,
whenever I sit in the corner and hit a 3, all right, Koiver.
All right. Well, you go back to the corner. Anyone have any last thoughts before we wrap up the show here, boys? All right, Austin, thank you so much for joining us.
I don't have thoughts.
Yeah, clearly. You don't have any thoughts, much less last ones. Austin, thanks so much for being here. Guys, hope you had a good time. Hope everyone out there enjoyed it. Say good night, fellas.
Good night.
Thanks for having me, boys. I'll be going back to my dungeon.